This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Radio stations of frequency, vibrational.
I was a homicide detective with LAPD.
UFOs increase. Visitations. Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told, where we dive deep into the life of Kathleen Marden, a figure who's lived in the shadows and light of one of the most bewildered and intriguing phenomenon of our time. Born into the legacy of Betty and Barney Hill, the first scientific investigative case of alien abduction, her quest for answers and truth have propelled her through a maze of enigmas and encounters with the unknown. Kathleen's story is more than just a personal odyssey. It's a testament to her courage to confront the unknown, her unwavering commitment to the silent voices of thousands of UFO contactees, and her tireless pursuit of truth that through archival research, experiments, and advocating for those who have pushed to the fringes of society. Well, join us today as we uncover the layers of Kathleen Marden's life, her groundbreaking research, and the secrets she's fought to bring to light, exploring the depths of government interest, the reality of non-human visitors, and the profound questions at the heart of human extraterrestrial interaction and our place within it. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, talking about her brand new book, Forbidden Knowledge, Kathleen Marden. Hello, hello.
Hello. So good to be with you.
I'm so happy to have you back. It's been a long time. I remember the first time I met you was at the 70th anniversary in Roswell.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the first time I got to meet you, and it was such a pleasure, and getting to know your work and everything over the years. It's been great. So it's an honor to have you back.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be back.
Well, you know, when I saw you had a new book out, I'm like, I gotta have Kathleen back, and you know, the title Forbidden Knowledge, and then it talks about your personal journey, you know, from the alien abduction from your aunt and uncle, and then, you know, your own journey into like a spiritual transformation, and I find that fascinating because I think even Whitley Strieber talked about how it, you know, definitely changed his spirituality and the way he looked, how, you know, at life in general. So let's just start there. What was your thoughts of putting this book together, and you know, what was the motivation?
Well, this is the second edition.
Mm-hmm.
The first edition was about my spiritual journey,
right,
essentially. And this is about my professional journey, about my life as the niece of Betty Hill, the relationship we had, what we did together, my research projects, my experiments, and my personal struggle with the unknown, and how I learned to overcome that feeling of victimization and moved on to becoming a survivor. So that was just a huge step and years of struggle.
Well, for the people that may not have heard your story, you know, many of us in this genre have heard your aunt and uncle's story, but tell us about your story, just, you know, in that Reader's Digest, and we can really start diving into that, your own, you know, encounters and your own experiences that you've you know, had in your life.
Well, I was 17 years old when my Aunt Betty agreed to do a series of contact experiments with a team of scientists, where they would give her a script and she would attempt telepathic communication with these non-humans who had abducted her. And then the scientists would go out and they would look for the craft that she was attempting to send to a certain location. Sometimes she was successful, sometimes she was not. But one of the places where she was continuously attempting to get a craft to come in and land was on my grandparents' farm. And I grew up right across the street from them. And then one night a craft did come in and it landed, and there were 2 people who saw it, and it was investigated. There was physical trace evidence on the ground. And what we never told anyone is that my mother and I were taken to craft that night, and it began my journey into the unknown and into the terror of the unknown that I went through, the feelings of exploitation,
Right.
of being used, of not being able to sleep, of in a sense, it's tragic.
Right.
In a sense, it ruined a part of my life. And finally, I was a social worker. I then became an educator, and an education services coordinator. And one day I sat myself down and said, you are going to be a victim for your entire life because of this event that's happening and you can't control it, or you're going to learn to become a survivor. And so I studied hypnosis early on in the 1990s. I did an academic study. It was with a small grant at the
Right.
University of New Hampshire. And I learned everything I could in all of the academic journals on hypnosis. And I wrote a paper on that. That paper went out to people in the field like Dr. John Mack and Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, and the Mutual UFO Network distributed it to their consultants, the psychological consultants, and so on and so forth. So I then decided that I really should study hypnosis and become a hypnotherapist. So I did that, and I used the techniques that I learned to put myself into deep trance hypnosis, so that when this light and these entities entered my environment, I could give myself certain key words, and those words would break through that fight or flight response, that
Right.
terror. And I learned just through my controlling my own mind instead of letting them control my mind, through this hypnosis practice, to project love at them. And when I started to do that, I'm thinking I'm tricking these people. Sorry, I almost swore.
That's okay. That's okay. I don't bleep.
So anyway, that's what I did. And then this began to turn around. And they began to communicate with me. And I began to remember more of the experience once they had me in their environment, and how they would continuously tell me that I was not going to be harmed, that they loved me. Now, I thought, you love me? You're probably lying to me, but
Right,
okay.
right.
Saying you love me, you say I'm family. Well, you're making me feel better, at least. So I'll accept that, even if I don't entirely believe you. And they projected toward me the sense of love that is deeper than any kind of love I have ever experienced as a human being from another human being. It was so profound that it sort of penetrated into every cell of my body. And it changed me in many ways. And they began to communicate more with me, to give me information about humankind, about why they're here. I wanted to know, if you want to make yourselves known, why don't you just take your craft en masse and hover at a certain time of day, at night, whatever, over all of the major cities in
Right.
the world. Why don't you just do that? And what they told me was, this is all telepathic, or sometimes I'm seeing images in my mind. But essentially, the response was, if we were to do that, you humans would interpret this as an invasion, and it would have dire consequences for you, because your militaries would feel that they have to defend this planet from us. And that's not why we're here. We're not going to invade you. We're not trying
Right.
to harm you. We're concerned about your survival. So, that was the message I received. They told me that our spiritual development is out of sync with our technological progress. And unless we could become a more spiritual species and learn to love and accept one another and stop this trying to, this warlike behavior, attempting to control one another, that sort of thing,
Right.
that it could lead to the annihilation of everything on this beautiful planet, because, we have nuclear weapons, and they became very concerned when they could see that we had developed nuclear weapons. And they're also concerned about us going out there where they are. I mean, most of these entities are not coming from their planet and their star system back and forth to Earth. Most of them are living in very large ships and have been for a very long time.
Right.
And, so that's their lives, from my understanding. Some of the planets are still inhabited. Some of the planets are extinct now, from what I've learned.
Well, we're not looking too good on this planet if the way we're going.
I know. And that's part of the reason that for many years I have been speaking around the world about our environment and about the ET's concerns about being good stewards to our environment, and trying to learn how to get along together.
Yeah.
Because, that's essential to our survival, not just human beings, but all life here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And one thing that stood out to me was when this first happened for sounds like a few years, the anger and like you said, it was a traumatic experience. And was it the lack of memory of the full episode is what kept you in more of the fear, because you didn't remember the way they treated you? Or was it I'm not going to,
Well, let me just explain.
Yeah, I want to explain it correctly, so maybe you can do it better than I'm asking.
I would remember, not always, I imagine, but I would remember them coming into my environment. I'd be awake. I'd see that light come in. I would see them come in. My husband would be frozen beside me.
Oh, he would
that
see
kind
this.
of thing. He knew this was happening, but he did not see them.
Oh, got it.
Because they had shut him down, essentially.
Right.
So they were doing what they wanted. I would try to escape. I'd try to defend myself, but then this is a paralysis would overtake me. And when you're paralyzed and you're terrified and you're having a fight or flight response, it is very traumatic. Then the next thing I knew, it was like coming out of anesthesia. I'd be back in bed and I'd start looking for the evidence. And I would, find a drop of blood on my navel or burns on my body or, that kind of thing. Puncture wounds in my body. And I was, that was extraordinarily distressing because there was nothing I could do about this. And I didn't remember everything that happened on craft. I would have glimpses of it. And that would be it. And so based upon everything that I knew and everything that I was feeling, I thought that this was just a horribly intrusive, very harmful situation. I felt like a lab rat and I wanted out. I just wanted to get away from these things. Just leave me alone. And then over time, things began to change. After I overcame the anger, after I started to gain understanding of them and what they said they were doing and why they were taking these samples, tissue samples from my body, they told me that they were concerned about environmental toxins. I didn't know it at the time when I was growing up, but I was just downstream and down the hill from what ended up becoming a Superfund site. It was a barrel factory that was taking in barrels full of chemicals, carcinogens, neurotoxins, and they would wash them out, and the water would run into the stream that fed the lake that I went swimming in.
Wow.
And into the groundwater that I was drinking. And, when I was an adult, a young adult, I went home and to visit my mother and started asking around about the children who were born on that street. And I found out that every single child on that street had a learning disability or had been diagnosed with some kind of a mental illness that was somehow connected to a learning disability. I think it depended upon the level of toxins in the parents' body and in their own bodies from drinking that water. The parents who had lived on that street, who had breathed in those toxins, who had absorbed them in any way that they could possibly absorb them as they were growing up. The mothers who were drinking that water, who were swimming in that lake when they were pregnant. So I can understand why they were so concerned about toxins in my body.
Isn't that crazy that off-planet beings are more concerned about the leaders of our own planet? How they're more concerned about us than our own.
That's true. They're concerned about us, but I think that they want to see us grow. Mm-hmm. They want to see us reach a level where we are able to move out into space. They will not permit it. They will not permit us to go to other inhabited planets until they are certain that we're not going to take our brand of friendship out there and exploit the people and take their natural resources.
I don't blame them one bit. Well, Kathleen, I have a question from the chat room, and I always call them my co-host. So I hope you don't mind if I ask a question from there.
No, fine.
Taville, I hope I'm saying that right, ask, what does the mind control feel like? And I mean, does it present in a specific way in your mind, or is a certain place like the top of your head, for instance, or just not detected physically?
I'm trying to think. It rendered me unable to do anything. It began with the paralysis, I believe. It's hard because I've never really concentrated on that mind control and how that happened. But it went from fight and flight and absolute terror into this paralysis that started at one end of my body and then went through the remainder of my body, to finding myself in a new environment. Not always on a table. Sometimes I was in like a waiting area and then taken to a table. Usually ended up on a table, but I was also given tours from time to time. So I could see things and they would explain some things to me. So what I think the big difference about that mind control was, I went from terror to feeling comfortable and in a familiar environment. That's what I think that mind control did to me.
Wow, great, thank you. And Tavil, I hope that answers your question. And one thing that I think all of us have dealt with when I was a kid in the 70s, my family saw a UFO, and even my dad didn't see it, but he's like, "Oh, you guys are nuts." So, but what is how do you navigate the challenges of like skepticism and like with the scientific community and even mainstream, even though it's changed a bit because, the Pentagon and, like the Navy and certain Air Force have come out and said that, there are UAPs, and it has changed a bit. But how did you, especially back in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, how did you handle that? Because people... Go ahead.
I was a chicken. Only recently have I come out and admitted that this has happened to me for most of my life. So I was acting sort of as a skeptic myself. And actually, I was skeptical. I was trying to find another explanation for my own memories, for my own experiences, for my own evidence. And but I knew that I was never going to tell anybody in the public. Bud Hopkins knew, John Mack knew, John Carpenter from MUFON. There were certain individuals, but this was a high level of confidentiality. Dr. James Harder, he hypnotized me in the mid-1970s. He was the head of investigations for the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and he was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. So, some of this was investigated. I had support from Bud, from John Mack, from the people that I've mentioned, but I wasn't even telling my best friends that this had happened to me. I was so fearful of ridicule, and I had a background. I was a social worker, and then I was a teacher, and I was an education services coordinator, and that was completely mainstream. I was raising children, and that was completely mainstream. So I didn't want any of that to be part of my life. So I sort of compartmentalized it and shut it off. And it was only when I would go to bed at night that I'd start shaking every night. And if I had to get up to use the bathroom, I would just walk with trepidation and I would stay in bed as long as possible. It was that kind of thing, that terror that comes in the night. But it was not sleep paralysis, and it was not a hypnagogic, a hypnopompic hallucination. It was as real can be, because dreams and sleep states do not leave physical evidence, do not leave burns on the body, do not cause hair loss, do not leave puncture wounds in the body, and black and blue marks on the body of apparently during a struggle, fingers, long fingers that turned black and blue.
Did you think you were like losing it, going crazy, as they say, or did you? Or I was going to say, did you know? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, or did you know that this was real?
I knew, deep down that this was real. I didn't want to admit it, but I mean, it caused such a deep level of trauma in me, the fear, and that's what I had to work through because I could live life as a victim or I could live life as a survivor, and that was something I learned in psychiatric social work, that and I chose to live life as a survivor. I wasn't going to be a victim to these entities that were intruding into my environment, inserting themselves and taking me without my permission.
So when you started understanding more of what these encounters were and starting to accept them more as encounters, not, tragic being victimized, did the entities or beings start showing up more frequent, or was it just random visits over the years?
It was more random visits. They came when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, a few times a year. It was never anything that was like every night or every month or anything like that. And then as time went on, they became less frequent, once a year, then once every 5 years. I wanted them to go away. I said, if you had to take me, just keep me asleep, so that I won't remember this. I value sleep more than I value the memories of your intrusions into my life, that sort of thing. And then I began an experiment in 2016. And this was with Kevin Briggs, who was a man who grew up in the UK, who had met these non-human entities for the first time when he was a young boy in the bathtub. And these two very, very tall, sort of human-like entities materialized in front of him. And then they came back time and time again throughout his lifetime. A ship had landed in a park when he was a paper boy over there, and he was a teenager, and he was taken to the craft. And I did hypnosis on him about that. And eventually, as I got to know him better, and a team of researchers invited me to meet with him. This was early on, but finally to meet with him and be able to communicate with these non-humans. That was something I really had to think about. Did I want to do that? That's forbidden ufology. That's unorthodox. You just don't do that.
Right.
However, I knew through my years of knowing the researchers who were connected to my Aunt Betty and communicating with these people who were really old timers in the field, that their curiosity continued. They didn't remain walking on that same treadmill over and over again for years. And so I decided that I would engage in this experiment where I'd have the opportunity to meet with these ETs that Kevin Briggs said that he was communicating with. And so we set limits. I agreed to do this, and Denise Stoner agreed to do this if we could collect scientific evidence. We weren't going to be sucked into some kind of fraudulent scam. Or who knows, we didn't know if this was some kind of debunking plan in order to make us look foolish, or if it was a hoaxer who was trying to piggyback off us, or what was going on here. So we insisted upon collecting physical evidence. And so we began having once a month meetings, one Saturday per month. and we were permitted to ask questions. Not many. We were allowed, one or two in the very beginning. But we'd meet sometimes at his house. We also met at my house a couple of times. And we took our tri-field meter. We took our laser thermometer. We took a tape recorder. I was the person who was in charge of tape recording everything that was said and in transcribing everything. But we were never going to speak about it to anyone. I was taking this to my grave. So at our first meeting, we were able to collect surprising evidence that an increase in the temperature of the environment in the room directly around Kevin's body. And as these entities would speak through him, he was drenched in perspiration. His clothing was soaking wet. He was completely exhausted pretty rapidly. But over time, these entities said they were raising his vibration so that he could have greater endurance for all of this.
Wow.
So we were able to measure as much as a 10-degree increase in the temperature of the room immediately around him, but not in the rest of the room. We felt a very strong tingling sensation through our bodies, like the tingling sensation I felt when I was on a table on a craft. And none of us knew this was going to happen in advance. We only learned about it when we discussed it after this meeting. And so finally, as we got to talk with these entities and they promised to give us evidence that they were real, and we began to collect evidence and we began to communicate with them, they made a pledge that they would protect us.
Oh, wow.
And that is when my experiences with these grays who had been taking me stopped. It stopped in 2016, and I have never had any contact with them since that time.
Are you glad, or do you still want more information that you can possibly get from them?
I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I never really liked them.
So I'm always curious, and here's your aunt and uncle, and I'm curious about your relationship with your aunt. We hear a lot about families, visitations that go down through the generations. Don't know why, but have you ever asked or thought about that? Why were you and your family chosen to be a part of these experiments or these encounters?
Well, that's one question I had for the ETs who were communicating with us through Kevin. How did you go about doing this and why?
Right.
And they said that initially they were not selecting anyone in particular. It was opportunistic. It could be someone on the back lands of the family farm, or someone out hunting or camping or fishing or driving down the road. And
random.
Then when they found the DNA that they were looking for, the characteristics that they were looking for, that is when they started to take people along family genetic lines. And they did this for a reason. The reason was that they were toying with our genetics, in a sense. They were attempting to upgrade us genetically from one generation to the next.
Wow.
Because they were trying to, I think, remove that sense of wildness, that that primal
Right.
part of us that wants to fight, that wants to overpower others, that wants to kill others. We no longer have to do that if we all agree to it. But they're taking people all over the world.
Right. Right.
They're not just taking people from the United States. And so that was their reason. They said they could see positive changes across generations along the same family genetic line. So that's what they told me was the reason why they did it.
Have you tried to find if your aunt was kind of the first encounter of the family, or was there people like grandparents, great-grandparents? I mean, can't go back too far, but have you found out any information about previous family members?
Well, I do believe that my grandmother was probably taken. I didn't learn this when I was a kid. I learned it much later in life after she had already passed. But I knew that Kraft had come in and that she had seen it out in her backyard. She lived on a farm.
Right.
And so out there. So that just leads me to believe that I know that Dr. Harder worked secretly with her. He was doing this investigation into intergenerational contact. And so I know that he also worked with my grandmother. My mother was taken, my Aunt Betty, and then me.
Wow. Has anybody else under you? I don't know. I can't remember if you had kids or not, or nieces and nephews. Have you heard of anybody else being visited?
That question is off limits. That's something that I will not answer.
That's actually probably a very smart thing to do. Yeah, to not answer that. Yeah, let them come forward. I'm sure. Yeah, when it's if that happened. Yeah, I don't blame you.
If any of them have had that, maybe one day they'll speak of it. Yeah. Maybe it didn't happen to them.
Yeah. Which, like I said, that's between them and their family and themselves. So, well, I do have a question, because before time gets away from us, how has your connection to the other realms, how does your connection to, the universe, spiritually changed? Like you said, you kept it to yourself for so long that you said you were chicken and didn't want to come out of the metaphor of the closet for UFOs, abduction. But how has that changed now that you are speaking your truth, and how are you getting more connected with the universe versus before?
It's the sense of a greater happiness than I've ever had. Almost
Nice.
like a weight has been lifted off me. I have the characteristics that near-death experiencers have. Not to say that I've had a near-death experience, but
Very
I've
similar.
become more intuitive.
Yeah.
I view the world differently than I did previously, than I did as a child. I'm not fearful the way
Wow.
I used to be. I think I've never really been a person who made material possessions a big goal in my life. In my life, my big goal has always been to help others.
Right.
And that's what was most important to me. So I've just continued on with that for all of my life. And I think in many ways, I had those characteristics earlier on, but I wasn't aware of it. I thought that everybody was like me. But I'm an empath. When I'm in close to someone, I can sense, sometimes, not all the time, but I can sense the health of their body. If they're feeling pain somewhere and I'm working with them, I'll say, "Are you experiencing a pain in such and such a spot?" And they say,
Oh, wow.
"Yes, I am." When these entities were coming into my office from time to time, I was actually able to speak with experiencers and ask questions. And I would feel a strong tingling sensation in my crown chakra when the answer was yes. And if the answer was no, there was no tingling sensation. It was that kind of thing. Some very strange things that might, they probably would have freaked me out earlier on in my life, but it was a long and progressive sort of study and progression toward the understanding that I have today. I've had dead people in my own family make me aware of their presence. I might hear a word,
right,
or I might smell the scent of my father's aftershave, something like that, just wafting through the air. So I wonder if there's some kind of an attachment or a window to another dimension that has opened.
That's interesting.
And that has brought these greater gifts to me, because I perceive them as gifts at this point.
Yeah, I like I said, in my encounter, I didn't, we just saw the UFO, but several years ago, my oldest sister, Sherry, she said after we went home after seeing the UFO hovering over a lake, she had a dream that the beings visited her, and she said when she woke up the next morning, her socks were completely like she had stepped outside in the dew or in water, or a puddle of water. And she says, I don't remember ever leaving my bed. So I'm like, did you get abducted or something? And she's like, I don't know. So what do you tell people, in the same boat as you, that maybe have thoughts or feelings of possible abductions? How do they go forward and try to understand if those are real, or if it's, just a bad dreams, or, how do they start that research for themselves?
Well, I wrote the book, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. And it is said to be the best guide ever written for experiencers. But start out just talking about what it's like, how to collect your own evidence. Always keep a journal. If you don't want to write, then record it on a recorder, or write it down, because you might forget over time.
Right.
You might forget some of those details, and you always want to put the date, the time. If you remember the light coming into your room, if you remember the entities, write down everything that you recall immediately. Don't wait. And if you don't like to write, just dictate it. And keep that. Then check your body. Check your clothing. Your sister's clothing showed evidence that she'd been outside. So why was she outside? Was she a sleepwalker who often would get up at night and walk around outside? What was this memory connected to craft? I wouldn't say I think you were taken, because I wouldn't want to make her feel frightened in any way, but start looking into this, start collecting evidence. If you find unusual patterned marks on your body, photograph them and keep them for yourself. And over time, you will understand. And, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted, also has chapters on the psychological impact, the emotions that you go through, the changes that you go through as these windows open up, where you might have paranormal kind of experiences in your home. You might have sightings of light orbs that seem to have intelligence inside your own home.
Right.
You might have the sensation that something that you can't see is on your bed, but you can feel the weight of it. or something walking on your bed. There are a number of things. Sometimes things fly off shelves immediately after you're returned. There's this energy, this kind of electrical energy that you carry back, or electromagnetic. I don't know if it's certain what it is, but you bring something back from their environment into your environment, and it can have an impact on certain things in your environment. So, I mean, I think that the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to be able to understand and accept what you've been through, what you're going through, and to either learn as much as you can about it or try to make it stop if you want it to stop. And that book has many suggestions on how to make it stop if that's what you wish to do. Also, the different types of contact you have, from highly positive to just the general scientific to the highly negative. And I wrote about some of my most interesting cases in that book as well.
Wow. Well, last question is for everybody that's just tuning in. We have the amazing Kathleen Marden on the show. She's back with us talking about her new book, Forbidden Knowledge, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. And what did you want when the people that read your book and they close the book after they finish reading? What is your hope they take away from this book?
My hope is that they will have learned, and then they can move on. If they're suffering from trauma, they might want EMDR therapy. So they might want to go to either Opus, OPUS, and talk to Lester Velez and a whole team who works confidentially with experiencers. They have a referral list that they can give to you of people who believe this is real and people who are there, and you can enter into a private for-pay relationship with them. The licensed therapists accept your insurance.
Nice.
So, that's a good thing. You can have this EMDR, post-traumatic stress kind of eye movement therapy, which is highly successful. And once you can get through that struggle, that emotional struggle, you can move on to do amazing things, to expand your consciousness, to learn more, to become much more spiritual. Some people even develop the ability to channel healing to others. So it comes along with some amazing spiritual gifts.
Well, every time I have you on, you are a spiritual gift to us. I really appreciate you doing what you do and writing this second edition of Forbidden Knowledge. Definitely we'll have you back on in the future, I'm sure, on your next book. But in the meantime, where do people find and follow you? And do you have any conferences coming up that they might come and hear you speak at?
Well, go to my website at Kathleen-Marden, MARDEN.com, and you can order autographed copies of all of my books there. Also, I'm working on a new project. It is a project on religious belief and extraterrestrial life. So we want everyone, whether you've ever had an experience, whether you don't believe in any of this, we're looking for people from all walks of life to take part in this. We now have about 700 who have.
Wow.
It's fast, it's easy, it's on SurveyMonkey. You just click on the link on my website and you'll see it at the top under the menu. And it's 25 questions for people who have never had a UFO sighting. And then it's 50 questions for those who have or have been taken to craft. So we're going to be, that's what my next book is probably going to be about. We're looking for 1,000 participants, so
Wow.
we truly appreciate it
Wow.
if you would participate in that. You can also purchase my books at Amazon in all formats. I have about 9, I guess, now. And that's what somebody told me yesterday anyway. I tend not to count. And I've been ill for quite a long time, for months, with COVID and post-COVID syndrome.
Oh, wow.
I'm just
Yeah.
back to work. And so I made the decision that since I still have some fatigue, I'm not speaking at conferences this year unless somebody invites me to speak at a one-day conference.
Right, right.
I'm going to be at the MUFON Symposium and it's in Irving, Texas, right by the DFW airport in mid-July.
Oh, that's
You can
great.
go to MUFON.com and read about that. You can also talk to the MUFON ERT, and they have a list also, besides Opus, of professionals that you can enter into a private relationship with. So I have a lot going on.
It sounds
keeping
like
me
it.
Busy. I'm working on that new book, and just really looking forward to that and to continuing to collect this research that we can share with everybody.
Well, I'm glad you are sharing it with us, and thank you for being here. It's so exciting to have you on again. And like I said, keep up the good work. If it was in theater, I'd say break a leg, but we don't want you to do that.
Thank you so much for having me on, and it was great to talk with you again.
Of course, and always, you're always welcome here on Truth Be Told. So thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm excited to have you here every Friday with me. It's been a pleasure, and I love to have you guys in the chat room being my co-host. And you can always come in every Friday and ask questions with me directly from you to the guest. That's what I want to get you guys involved. And also Monday, you can listen to Robert Hensley do the Minuteman Report. He does some great shows on just multiple different topics. Bonnie Burkard does a show on Wednesday at 3 o'clock called Truth Be Told Transformation. More spiritual, more, the meditation, the yogis, and does a great job in what she does. And then please subscribe, follow, share these shows, and listen to us on our YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, everywhere. We have almost 900 episodes, so there's plenty to listen to. And make sure you go to my new nonprofit organization called Earthly Beings Foundation. You can go to earthlybeings.org, and it is a new foundation that I'm creating to preserve and honor our ancient traditions and ancient religions and stuff that we've kind of forgotten about, such as Native American, Egyptian cultures, and cultures all over the world. And we're going to bring those to local events and hopefully national events going forward. So we'd appreciate you going over there and just checking it out. And if you feel like it, you can donate your time or donate some money. It doesn't matter. I just appreciate you and hope you get involved in somehow. So, well, until next time, I'm Tony Sweet. I'll see you next Friday right here on Truth Be Told. So please take care of yourself and each other. Until then, bye-bye. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.